So you're looking to make your monitoring setup more useful, less complicated, and way easier to use regardless of whether you're close to the camera or far away. Maybe you want somebody to monitor it without having to run long cables. Well, this video, I'm going to go through what I've been using as my monitor and wireless transmission setup, show you how you could use that and if it might be a good option for you. Before we get started, just a quick disclaimer. I did get sent this monitor and the wireless transmission units from Shimbol, the manufacturer. They don't get to see the content before I publish it. They have no say in it. All of what I'm talking about is my own experiences and opinion and thoughts on these systems. I am also using this monitor right here. So typically I would push this back a little bit. It's very easy because it's a pretty small setup. It's a 5.5 inch monitor. And it's very easy to just like push it back a couple inches here and have it out of the shot. But since we are talking about that today, I do have it sitting in the shot in the corner of the frame just a little bit so that you can kind of see what I'm referencing, because I'll probably be pointing at this and when I'm talking about it a lot throughout the video. So this wireless monitoring setup, as I'm using it, is made up of two different parts. The first main part is the monitor, and that is the Shimbol M5 monitor, a 5.5 inch monitor. It can take up to a 4K signal over HDMI. In the box with the monitor, you do get the monitor itself, obviously, a protective case that everything comes in, which is actually a pretty nice case. And if you don't have a way to store it or carry it around, it is definitely nice to have. It also comes with an HDMI cable and an HDMI to micro HDMI cable, which are very nice to have. And it's not the best cables as far as like, probably if you're going to be using this pretty often in situations where you're moving around, you might need a different cable length depending on your camera setup, what camera you're using it with, or you might want something like the HDMI cables that have like right angle hooks on them and then like a coiled cable so that it's not flying out on the side of your camera. It's taking up less space anyway, less likely to get caught on something. However, having those cables in the box with the monitor is really nice, and it at least gives you the ability to just pull it out and plug it in and get going in most cases. Now, again, it had the HDMI to HDMI and HDMI to micro HDMI. If you have some other version of HDMI, import on your camera, then you will still have to get your own cable. But I think for most people, one of those cables is going to be the right option for most modern cameras, whether that is a more full-size cinema camera or mirrorless camera, something like that. In the box, it also came with a screen protector, which I have not put on there. And actually, if I'm being completely honest, I haven't taken off the plastic film from the monitor yet. I don't know. That's a weird thing about me. I just don't like taking those off. I'll probably take that off in the video at some point. But it does come with a glass screen protector. Obviously, I haven't taken the film off, so I haven't put that on. I don't know that I will end up using that screen protector, but it is there and probably a good thing. I might need to just go ahead and put that on. As far as the design of this monitor, it is really cool, really straightforward. 1/4 inch mounting brackets on the bottom of the monitor as well as on the side. So if you need to mount it vertically or horizontally, you have both of those options. It also has a slot for an SD card, and this is not for recording. This is not an external recorder. With that SD card, you can do things like load your own LUTs and monitor the footage with. It does have an 1/8 inch headphone jack, so that's just your standard headphone jack. It has both an HDMI in as well as an HDMI out. And then for power on the back, you do have a slot for an NPF style battery. Then a couple strange things about how this monitor is built. The first one is that there is a DC in port for providing power, like if you're plugged into a wall. However, it doesn't say what voltage it requires in the port, and I'm not sure what that voltage is or what you would need to make that work. So I have not tried that or tested that, and it's not something that I'm planning to do anyway. I'm just going to be using the NPF batteries. It does seem to have a USB-C port on the bottom, but it does not have power delivery, or it can't accept power delivery through that USB-C port. So I'm really not sure what that USB-C port is about, because it's also not really even talked about in the manual. So it's possible that the reason for it being there is to be able to transfer files like LUTs and stuff to the SD card from your computer. I haven't tested that, and that's, again, probably not something that I'm going to be using in the way that I use this monitor. So then for me, the other part of this setup that I'm using is the Shimbol TP Max. That is their wireless transmission system. And the Max is supposed to be rated for up to 1,000 feet. Now, I'm in a small studio space in an extra bedroom in my apartment. I don't have 1,000 feet to really test that in here. I will try to test that at some point in this video. All right, so I wanted to show how this would potentially work, at least in a live stream setting. I have a camera up here, and the HDMI signal is going out of that camera to the transmitter. It is obviously working. So now we're gonna go further and further away and see how far we can get this set up to actually work and transmit properly. It's probably 150, maybe a couple hundred feet from us. The image is still being transmitted without any issues. So I'm gonna walk the camera kind of a big distance, and it's going to be out of this auditorium room. So I wanted to show how far we're going before I show you whether or not this is working. So you can probably tell based on how far away that door is from us, and again, like, then you have another probably 150 or so, maybe 175, 200 even feet into the room before you get to where the camera is sitting. At this point, the signal is still showing up. Haven't had any issues yet. A live feed, again, still working from over 1,000 feet away. At this point, I was not expecting to even like consider this as something for like a terribly inconveniently placed live stream room that's 1,000 feet plus away and several walls away. For me, for my peace of mind, I would absolutely have at least one main angle always like hardwired. But if you wanted to have other angles, and especially moving angles, it definitely seems, based on this test, it seems like you could get away with that. Again, like, still have not dropped the signal on this. Yeah, I am very impressed with the range on this system. As far as what's in the box with the TP Max system, it's much more straightforward. You get the transmitter unit, you get the receiver unit, and then you get two USB-C to USB-A cables. Now, these units are almost identical, and there's only really two minor differences to be able to tell which one's which. One says TX and one says RX. So obviously the TX is going to be the transmitter. If you get into the habit of looking at that first, then easy, problem solved. Another slight difference is that they both have two HDMI ports on them. On the receiver, it's going to be two HDMI out ports. And on the transmitter, it's going to be one HDMI in and one HDMI out port. As far as the rest of what's on the units, both of them have an on-off switch on the front. Above that, they also have a play and a stop button. And then above that, there is like a indicator bar, and it just have lights that light up. And that's going to tell you, first of all, if the power's on, battery status, and connection status. There's not a lot of info here, to be honest, but the way that it shows up, it is pretty intuitive and straightforward, and it's been really easy to just plug in and play. They've also connected automatically every time that I've used them, so not having a lot of info has not been a big deal. And, you know, as long as they're working, you get an HDMI signal into the monitor from whatever camera you're hooking it into, so that also hasn't been a problem because I haven't had a situation where I've had to trouble check. But if I were troubleshooting and not getting the info that I needed, those displays aren't going to give you very much info to work with. Of course, as soon as I say that, now they don't seem to be communicating properly. And the lights are not helping me. But all I did was unplug the HDMI from the monitor and plug it back in, and now it's working. So something to note, that has not happened a lot, but literally as soon as I said that I haven't had any connection issues with it, it did cut out for a second. Going back to the design and physical build of the TP Max units, and they are primarily plastic build, by the way, which is good on the one hand, certainly because they are very light, and that's going to make it not be a problem for adding a bunch of extra weight to your camera setup, especially if it's like a handheld rig that you're trying to put them onto. But then, you know, again, they just are plasticky. Both of the units do have an NPF battery mount. So if you're running them by battery, that's going to be like the kind of obvious, natural way to do it. However, I want it to be a little fun. So the way that I'm actually powering this right now is, so, okay, obviously HDMI from the monitor to this receiver unit, and on the receiver unit, HDMI coming out, the signal going to the monitor. And then I actually have this plugged into a battery bank. Obviously, the easy option, like I said, would be just put an NPF battery in here. So both of these USB-C ports on the transmitter and the receiver you're able to do power delivery through them. So you can plug them into a wall. So I've also, right now, for instance, because yeah, why not? Just be a little weird with it instead of using an easy NPF solution. I have the transmitter unit plugged into the wall through USB-C. And then I have this receiver unit, like I said, plugged into a battery bank also through USB-C cable. If you need to be a little more mobile, you can obviously just put a little NPF battery on there. But if you need something that's going to give you more runtime or indefinite runtime, and it's not a mobile situation, again, the transmitter unit is just plugged into the wall through USB-C power delivery. I think that's really cool and makes them a lot more flexible and more versatile. And both the TP Max and the M5 monitor will work completely fine on their own, or if you're mixing and matching the wireless transmission system with a different monitor, or a monitor even with a different transmission system, obviously they're going to work fine. But I've been using them paired together, obviously, as I said at the beginning of the video. And my main use case is for something like this, to be able to have a monitor like right in front of me. This is literally right here. As I'm filming, as I'm setting up a shot, whether it is me in a talking head situation like this, which makes it really nice to be able to sit down in front of the camera. And so I'm using my Canon C200 right now, and it does have a monitor, and I can flip that backward, which actually I forgot to flip it towards myself, which I usually do. Even if I'm using this monitor, I usually do it, but I forgot to for this video. And it's fine because if I need to check something, it's right here on this monitor. It's just easier to be setting up a shot. And if it is something where like I'm using the 100mm macro, then I'm probably doing like some kind of close-up product shot, some kind of coffee shot, something like that. And then just have the monitor just barely out of the shot right there. So I can really easily look at a larger monitor, first of all, with more detail, and arrange the shot and change what I need to without having to actually just physically go walk over to the camera and see. Realistically, like that might add a couple minutes to each shot. And if you're doing like several shots a day, those minutes add up. And then over several days or over several weeks or months or years, that's a lot of time that you have wasted going back and forth to your camera to look at the camera monitor. And I know that's not some like groundbreaking revelation, but it's the first time I've brought this into my workflow realistically. And having it, again, the wireless transmission system with it has made it really, really easy and really, really nice to work with. There certainly are some advantages to just using the camera's built-in monitor. And the first one is just like size and weight. Anytime you're adding stuff onto your camera, it's making it bigger and heavier of a setup. But on the other side of that, there are definite advantages to having an external monitor. And having a monitor that is bigger and brighter than the one that's built into your camera, being able to compose your shot more easily and quickly. And another advantage is for shooting in log. If you have a LUT that you are typically using, or just some kind of color correction that you are typically going to use on footage in your workflow anyway, then it's really easy to upload that to an SD card, put it in here, and be able to, just based off of the LUT, know exactly what your footage is going to look like, or at least your starting point for the footage. And then obviously you can grade and get things to exactly where you want to from there. So that is a definite workflow enhancement. You have a lot of tools that you can use. There's histograms built in here. There's false color built in here. There's zebras, like all of your exposure tools that you would want are built in here. The color tools like the LUT can be uploaded. And on this monitor, one thing that I really like is It is touchscreen, so you have touchscreen controls on here, but it also has custom function buttons. It's really easy. You just go into the settings menu and there's a function setting. You click F1 in the menu. From a list of possible options, you just assign one there and just touch it. And then the next time you touch that F1 button, it's going to do whatever you assigned it there. So it's really intuitive, really straightforward. And that is something that with a lot of monitors, they just aren't super intuitive to get set up. And then like once you get them set up, they have your workflow and it's easier to use from there. But the like setting up is less intuitive. And that's one thing that's also kept me from like being like, okay, I want to put this monitor into my workflow. This has really gotten out of the way and made things from a workflow perspective really easy for me. And I really like that. I think this monitor for its price point is really good value for the money. For me, again, what I like about this monitor is that it doesn't complicate the workflow. You have the touchscreen controls. There are extra features that you can use, like the custom LUTs, and it has the exposure tools that I want, waveforms, histogram, false color, all of that is built into the monitor, really easy to get to. You can set each of those to a separate custom function. You can also, which is very important to me, you can lock the touchscreen. So plug it in, turn on what I need to, and then lock the touchscreen. If I would need to turn histograms on or off, or if I need to turn false color on or off, I just assign those things again to those custom function buttons. And then I don't have to lock and unlock the touchscreen because I don't want to accidentally bump something and change a setting while I'm filming and not paying attention. And then I look over and I don't know, I've changed the brightness and then the exposure looks off or something like that. So again, this is not going to be probably the most feature packed or the highest resolution 5.5 inch monitor that exists on the market, right? But for the value, the price that it's at, I think it is an easy choice. And again, for someone like me that just wants something that's going to make the workflow easier and then get out of the way. A similar situation for the TP Max unit. And there is another transmission unit from Shimbol that costs less, that has less distance. The rated transmission distance is. And so if you're trying to save a little money, that can probably also be an option for you. But again, for me, it's a workflow thing, and it gets out of the way. It sends the video across the room that I need to, and it just makes being able to monitor my footage as I'm setting up a shot, as I'm filming a shot, so much easier, so much nicer, and saves me the time of having to walk back and forth to the monitor to check something. I can just set it up right next to where I'm working and set up the shot and then just go. Things that save me time over and over again, that's really, really worth it. Again, what I like about these is they're easy, plug and play. You plug them in, they connect to each other really simply. And there's been that couple times like earlier in the video where the signal dropped out for a second. I had to unplug the HDMI from the monitor and replug it in. I'm not sure if that's actually on the monitor or the transmission units, but I've never had that situation when I had the monitor directly connected to the camera. So I'm thinking it's something happened between the transmission units and the monitor. And it is also possible that I just like banged the desk and made the HDMI connection come unseated. That is something that can happen with HDMI connections. So anytime you're working with HDMI connections, that's something to keep in mind. But in general, they have not caused me issues, and they have been a great help in making my workflow more effective and more efficient, which is, especially right now, that's something I'm really focused on in 2025, is just making my workflow more efficient. And these have been a great help to that. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about these units. Have you used these or some other type of wireless monitoring system? Are you thinking about adding a wireless monitoring system to your setup? Have you been doing that already? What did I miss about these or about other monitoring systems? Are there other things that you think people should look at? Again, let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button so you can see more of the videos that I'm making on this channel. Thanks. See ya.